Hello everybody, my name is Spirit and this is Bewitched Adventures. Today I want to talk to you about the commonly asked questions about witchcraft, or at least the commonly asked questions that I have seen most often. And so let's begin. So what is magic and what is with the K? So my own definition is magic is the study and application of will to manipulate the energies of the multiverse in order to attain a specific outcome. Foolish Fish, another YouTuber, said magic is the study of the entire universe and the knowledge, and then the practical use of that knowledge. Aleister Crowley originally said magic is the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. So let's discuss that for a second. So magic is the study and application of will. So you are always studying something in witchcraft. It's not something you just suddenly know or just snap your fingers and have the ability to do. It takes some sort of practice or initiation, depending on your path and the people you're interacting with. So that is something to consider if you're going to get into witchcraft, is that it's a journey all about learning about the world around you. The application of your will to manipulate the energies of the multiverse. Some people will say universe. The reason why I said multiverse is because I believe personally that it is the entirety of existence that we have the ability to interact with on some level. And now maybe or maybe not can we manipulate all that energy, but I do believe that we can affect it. Maybe not necessarily in the way we expect to, but I do believe that there is the potential to interact with everything, and that the divine actually does encompass everything, not just our little section of existence. And then we want to attain a specific outcome, so we generally have a goal in mind, and when we apply our will to achieve that goal, that's when we start to see outcomes, at least within our reality. And sometimes that doesn't take the form that we think it's going to. But to put it in, I guess, simpler terms, magic is the application of the mind to manipulate various energies. Activities that you might find witches doing in witchcraft might be creating homemade items. That might include soaps, perfumes, candles, herbal medicines, food, and oftentimes will be empowering them with magic, if not an actual spell, or doing a ritual with them or something. And you have spell writing and spell casting. We often will write our own spells, and a lot of them will be very sing-song or poetic. You'll see poetic devices used in there, maybe even poetic forms. The reason for this is that the more effort that you put into a spell, the more likely it is to see results. Magical tools as well: wands, scrying mirrors, staves. Some people make their own tarot cards, their own runes, all kinds of things. The K in magic was brought about when Aleister Crowley decided to add it. He added it to differentiate it from stage magic. Nowadays, we also use it to differentiate it from Hollywood movie magic, which I still consider stage magic, but I put it in there as a different thing because sometimes people think stage magic is kind of like watching Houdini, and then they don't consider that Hollywood movie magic is going to be fake. This is to say that witches do not go around throwing fireballs out of their fingertips. I'm not saying that there is nobody out there that can do that, but if people are able to throw fireballs and start fires with their mind and stuff, it's a very rare ability. And I have seen no proof of such things, so I'm not going to try to claim that magic works that way and allows you to do some really amazing things. Although sometimes I wish that it did exist that way, it definitely does not for most people. What exactly is a witch and what is witchcraft? A witch is a type of individual who practices witchcraft. We utilize magic, and magic is the way that we interact with the energies of the universe, or the multiverse, if you will, and manipulate the energies therein, often to reach a specific goal. Although many people will also say that we interact with it on a daily basis, regardless of what our goals are. Witchcraft itself is what a witch practices. It can include writing spells, charms, crafting ritual tools, and ultimately working or shaping or molding the world around us to be a bit more favorable and oftentimes happy for us and our families and friends and, just people we interact with and care about. Does science support magic principles? This is a little bit of a tough one, and the reason being is that the answer is that it both supports and disproves the existence of magic at the moment. It supports it in that there are scientists that do believe and attempt to prove it through metaphysical research, and oftentimes you'll find that quantum physics will support things that seem very magical as well, but we are learning that are very scientific in a way. Although some people do still look at the theories of quantum physics as being invalid or very, out there and not very real, I guess would be a good way to put it. It just, that is what it is at the moment. But science does support it in that science is always changing, right? When we learn something new or we come up with a new way to measure something, we see things that were considered not true before or were considered to be subpar information to suddenly be proved, or vice versa. We see things that were considered true before to be no longer true. And that would be kind of like in medicine, the four humors system of medicine, where we had a lot of medical beliefs based on information that is now very outdated. I recommend researching that yourself. It would be the four humors, and it's very interesting. You may find that it is it wasn't very long ago, and it was very what most people now would consider silly. So I would definitely take a look at that and kind of see the progression of science in that way. It does attempt to disprove magic exists because there are skeptical science out there that do actively try to disprove it. And sometimes there are things that they do say, yeah, no, that definitely doesn't exist, and here's why. And that's often because they feel that we can't measure the existence of any sort of magical energies or anything like that. But we are attempting to do research on that, including Dr. Emoto's research on water crystals. And what he did was he applied various stimuli to water crystals and then watched them, and some of them did make beautiful water crystals, where a lot of them that were exposed to negative stimuli would not form water crystals. These ideas are not original to me. This is me putting them in my own words, but I will admit that a lot of these ideas are definitely not my original works, so do to keep that in mind too. There are other people that did say some of these things and stuff. So magic is science, but it is science that we have yet to understand or to fully understand. Miracles are just magical just as magical as a witch's spells or a haunting. Just because we cannot see the divine doesn't mean it isn't real. Just because we cannot see oxygen most of the time doesn't mean it isn't in our lungs. And so that is to say that you have a lot of skeptics, but really, when it comes down to it, magic and the way that we use it these days is anything out of the ordinary, anything that's not scientifically proven. So now we are seeing divine magics like laying of hands and stuff like that, things that would be considered miracles in some faiths are now being considered just magical as well, or just as magical as a witch, as witchcraft basically. And a lot of people are afraid to say that, and I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just stating that that is an opinion out there. And miracles are amazingly similar, but the big difference is that in Christianity specifically, you see the opinion that because it is of God, that it is different than a witch's magic, which is seen as being blessed upon people by, or cursed upon people by the devil, Satan, or Lucifer, depending on which being, or whether or not you believe that that triad of beings is one person or multiple people. Which is a whole nother topic, but a very interesting one. But yeah, just because we cannot see God does not necessarily mean that God doesn't exist, right? And just because we cannot see the oxygen we're breathing in without a lens to focus us in, or without dyeing the air, or however it is we have come to view oxygen in its various in various ways, doesn't mean it's not there, right? Just because we can't grab oxygen in our hand, very easily, doesn't mean that it's not there. And I say very easily because I think even if you squeeze your fist together, there's probably still some oxygen in the cracks and stuff. But the point is it's not very tangible. But just because it isn't doesn't mean it's not there, right? We still breathe it. We still need it to survive. It's still there. And there are various religions that put a lot of faith into one or more deities, and who am I to tell them, or who is anybody to tell them, that those deities do not exist, right? I'm not saying that the Christian God doesn't exist. I'm not saying that, the Hindu aspects of the divine are not, accurate in the way that they perceive them to be accurate. And I'm certainly, not saying that anybody is right or wrong. But those are just some things to take into consideration when you think about, is it real, right? Is it something that science supports? Yes and no. But again, just because we believe something doesn't exist doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right? Because there are plenty of people that still do. So just because we do or don't doesn't mean that it does or doesn't. A YouTuber that I have seen, and I'll try to find, I'll try to find that video again and then link it below. It's called "What is the Difference Between Science and Magic?" And the 3 levels that they identify are miracles at level 1, and this is the stuff that we often see in our world and stuff. Then you have hard magic, which is when you start to, I think, if I recall correctly, is when you start to get into the real, like, magic, like throwing fireballs and things like that. That's the high fantasy, high magic, fantasy kind of magic that you're looking at, throwing fireballs, your magic missiles, and things like that. telepathy, teleporting, things like that. Then you have your metaphysics, and this is when it starts to get science-y, and you start to see science and magic kind of meshing together. So his video is worth watching. I will link it below. I believe I saved it, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue. I do highly recommend taking a look at that video, as it is quite an amazing perspective on the difference between magic and science. All right, you see a lot of words: Wicca, Wiccans, witches, pagans, maybe folk practitioners, all kinds of different terms, wizards, and a lot of them are used or seen as used interchangeably, but they're actually not. They all have very specific meanings, and I'm going to talk about the three main ones that I see a lot, which are Wiccan, witches, and pagans. So I'm going to start with what is a witch, because a witch is a practitioner of magic. It is often used as an umbrella term for a wide range of practitioners from various cultures. You will see it all over the place. It is also often perceived as a person who's being very rebellious, and they can belong to any religion, and each religion does receive them differently and uniquely. For example, while witches exist in Christianity, and you will find Christians that also are witches, and that is to say that it is somebody that believes in Christian values, but may not believe that magic or witchcraft is evil, and so they do practice witchcraft. On the other hand, maybe they do believe that witchcraft is evil and that they've sold their soul to the devil, or all those other things. It's unique to the individual what they believe, and I can guarantee that there is likely somebody out there that believes the way in a stereotypical way, and then there are people that believe outside of that stereotype as well. But that's just one example. And now in Wicca and many pagan beliefs, they don't believe that witchcraft is wrong or evil. Many of them have no dealings with any devil, or and then there are some that might. So there's I'll get into that a little more in a little bit too, but anyways, a witch is an umbrella term, and you can belong to any religion, and yeah. So a Wiccan is most often a type of witch from a specific religion under the witchcraft umbrella. I say most often a type of witch, and that's because I have heard of Wiccans that are not witches, which might sound a little awkward, especially to some other witches out there who understand Wicca to be a religion based around witchcraft. So it did sound a little odd to me at first too, I do admit that, but I have heard that there are Wiccans that do not consider themselves witches. Maybe they consider themselves a different kind of spellcrafter, or not even at all. The big thing for the religion is that they believe in the god and goddess, and they utilize magic to achieve their goals. So that there are two terms here that could be clarified, which will be, let's see, bitheism and ditheism. And my understanding of the two is that bitheism is two divine forces that work together, and ditheism are two divine beings that kind of are apart from one another. But I'm not entirely sure on that. I will have to look that up a little more and get some clarity on that. But you will see those terms, as well as polytheistic. Sometimes polytheistic is correct. It depends on the Wiccan or the pagan that you are going to be interacting with. Some pagans are polytheistic, and some of them just believe that there are many aspects of the divine when it comes to the god and the goddess. And you will even find some people that are pantheistic or even monotheistic, in that they believe in one god or one goddess, and that they have multiple faces of the divine that they utilize to help focus their intention or to relate to the world around them. A pagan is not necessarily a witch, and instead it's a practitioner of one or more of the many religions that are affiliated with nature worship. In some circles, pagan also can refer to all non-Christian faiths, but this is not a common definition among pagans, although many people are aware of it within the pagan religions. But yeah, pagan can mean a whole lot of different things. A Wiccan is usually pagan, and a lot of witches are pagan, but none of these terms means that somebody is the other thing. So it is important to understand that they are very different terms. Is witchcraft evil? So good and evil is a cultural ethical standard, and it varies from culture to culture and even person to person. Fundamentally, all things are neutral until we apply a cultural understanding to it or our own personal morals and values. So what I mean by this is that what you consider evil in one country or in one culture or subculture, you know, it's not necessarily what everybody around the world believes, right? It is very common to believe that witchcraft is evil if you are Christian, but it is not necessarily evil for you to believe that witchcraft is evil if you are Wiccan, or if you want to look at it in a different way too. It's, a lot of people believe that Satan is evil. But if you are a Satanist, you probably see Satan as being heroic or a figure to, lift up. And I could do a whole video on the different types of Satanism and stuff, but I will hold that for another conversation. I personally do not believe that witchcraft is evil. Witchcraft is evil, or that witches are evil. But that doesn't necessarily mean a person that practices those things or that is a witch is not evil. It just means that I believe that it is a neutral force to begin with, and then when you apply it to a particular person, that particular person has the ability to be good or evil, as is perceived within my cultural understanding, and by my morals and my values and maybe ethics in the cultures and subcultures to which I am a part of. But if people that I encounter do believe that witchcraft is evil or whatever, that's fine. If you guys run across people that believe that you're evil for being a witch, just ignore them. Honestly, like, their opinion only matters to a degree, right? If your safety becomes at risk, because they believe that you're evil, if you're being harassed, whatever, report it to the proper authorities. Block them if you're online and that's the case. If you have to file restraining orders, do that. The big thing is that at least here in America, we do have freedom of religion, and witchcraft is a religion for some people, and so is Wicca, and so is paganism. So their opinion is theirs. Let them have it. Don't engage them negatively, because that's when you start to see problems arise. Just, respectfully, say, thank you. I appreciate your opinion, but I don't share it. Have a wonderful day. And just let it be there, just let it go. Do witches worship Satan, Lucifer, the devil? I also want to add, or the serpent from the Garden of Eden, because depending on who you ask, these four creatures, these four beings are either the same or they're all individualized. So, but the short answer is some witches do worship Satan, some do worship Lucifer, some do worship the devil, and I'm certain some do worship the serpent from the Garden of Eden. And then some just don't. Some people believe that, like I said, that all of these beings are the same. Some believe that they're different, and that is an important note. In Luciferianism, Lucifer is not evil. So in Luciferianism, Lucifer is the hero of the story. I do recommend you kind of look that up and take a peek at what that looks like. In Satanism, it is perceived that Satan is a companion more than a deity to be worshipped. That's some versions of Satanism. I do know that there are many versions of Satanism. Some believe that he is a deity, some believe that he's a companion, and some believe that he's just symbolic and they don't, that no deities at all exist. And it is often about empowering yourself. And so in that way, some do, some don't. In Gnosticism, the snake in the Garden of Eden is the savior of the story and it is not Satan. And Jesus is an agent of the true God, and the God in the Holy Bible is an evil being enslaving humanity to his will. So that and Gnosticism was one of the heretical paths that branched off of Christianity during early Christianity, and when the people that were mainstream believing mostly what we believe now after Constantine, I believe it was Constantine, made the Bible into a text. Before that, Christianity was an oral tradition. And so we do see a lot of differences branching off as people really took Christianity and it kind of was molded by different perspectives and stuff, or who knows, maybe actual like divine information, and who knows which was correct at this point. But Gnosticism is worth looking into, as are the other heretical versions of Christianity. I recommend looking at the Apocrypha and the lost books of the Bible, things like that. You will get a very different perspective on what is and is not, possibly true. What would the Holy Bible look like if we put all the information in there versus just what the church decided to, or what the kings decided to, etc. What would it look like if translations were more accurate? All that kind of good stuff. So the ultimate answer to this is yes and no. Some witches do worship Satan and Lucifer, the devil, and some do not, right? Because witchcraft itself is not a religion, it is a practice, and it is the practice of manipulating energies with your mind. It has nothing to do with religion until we decide that it does. I think the confusion is widely because the term witches, or the term witch and witchcraft, was probably grabbed a little bit in rebellion. We probably called things witches something different depending on the cultural perspective. I think in Irish Gaelic witchcraft, it's called like Dree, or maybe you've heard druids. Like, they're not necessarily witches, but they were very much related to it. Like they would have been called witches. So it's hard to say, that it's, maybe some people do use it as a very rebellious term. So it's something that people are working on reclaiming. And turning into something good. But I understand where the clash comes and why it seems like if you call yourself a witch, you're also opposing the church, or you're opposing Christianity, trying to push back against Christianity. I understand where that perception actually does come from. But yeah, most witches do not worship Satan, the devil, the serpent, or Lucifer in any form. Um, that is reserved for a very specific set of witches, and that's okay. That, in my opinion, that they do believe in those things. But I also want to point out too that there are witches in all kinds of religions and all kinds of faiths around the world, spiritualities and whatnot, that do not believe in any of those beings. They believe in various other deities or spirits, the She, which would be fae or fairies, but you just keep in mind too that not everybody does believe in those things. So by telling somebody, oh, well, you worship the devil, you sold your soul to the devil or whatever, they may not believe that. It's okay that you do, but please, try to keep that to yourselves if that's something that you believe, because most people do find that incredibly offensive. Do witches have a soul? So I believe that they do, but that would be my personal belief. Some people don't believe that the soul exists at all. And some people believe that the only way to have access to magic is if you have sold your soul to an evil entity that either is Satan or the devil or something akin to, a demon or another infernal creature of temptation. So it's a tricky question to answer, because if you do believe that witches have a soul, it's kind of like, who doesn't have a soul at that point, right? If you believe that witches have sold their soul, then no, they don't have a soul. But if you believe that people have a soul, then witches would have had a soul at some time and don't anymore. But if you don't believe that you have to sell your soul to be a witch, then why wouldn't witches have a soul like everyone else? So, it's a cultural lens or a subcultural lens or religious lens, something like that. And it comes down to the personal opinion. But the fact is how do you prove? How can you measure if a person has a soul or not? Right? We don't really have technology that does that. So it's hard to prove or disprove whether or not a witch has a soul. So my answer on that is my personal individualized view on that is that yes, I believe that everyone has a soul, but I also believe that we're all interconnected and that we're all part of, one big divine entity. So it really does come down to your perception. Who can practice witchcraft? Anyone. Absolutely anyone can practice witchcraft. It really doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. It doesn't matter what religion you practice. It may matter to others within that religion, but that doesn't mean you can't do it, right? It may be taboo in your culture. It may not, be something that you get support from. You may even get some kickback from people within that religion, but that doesn't mean you can't do it, right? So it really is going to depend whether or not you practice or not, whether or not you're comfortable doing so or not. Magic belongs to everyone and is part of the human story and part of the story of the multiverse. So I would keep in mind, your comfort levels, what you want to do. Are you called to practice witchcraft? And if you are, how can you do it safely? Some people cannot, right? Some people live in areas where they would immediately be killed for being a witch, or they would, maybe lose their job. So maybe not everybody is out of the broom closet, so to speak, and that's okay. Just do things that are safe for you in a way that is not going to get you into any trouble, in the way that is going to cause you harm. Do witches have, wait, did I go backwards? Yes, I did. How did that happen? Okay. How do you become a witch? So decide you are going to be a witch. Learn about your core values, who you are, what you stand for, and the like. The reason why this is so very important is it forms a foundation for you to stand on and gives you a place to really learn what your values and stuff are in life. And it helps you align yourself and your magic with those values. So by understanding those things, you understand where you're going in life. When you understand where you're going in life, you're going to be more likely to be successful. So step 3, practice good self-care. That is because if you are not caring for yourself, how can you really align yourself with the previous step, your values and stuff like that? So you need to take care of yourself. You really need to do that self-care in order to maintain a good state of mind. And by strengthening your mind, you're going to have better results with your magic. Research witchcraft in general, the history of witchcraft, what witchcraft is in a modern sense, why we call ourselves witches. This video is a good first step, but it is not the only step you should take. I would recommend reading, watching more YouTubers, doing all that kind of stuff, because in general, that is